We are still in Book 1, Canto 3, and we won't be there too much longer, but it's extremely important for us to know about the yoga of the soul's release. So we see a vision lightened on the viewless heights, a wisdom illumined from the voiceless depths, a deeper interpretation, greatened truth, a grand reversal of the night and day. All the world's values changed, heightening life's aim. A wiser word, a larger thought came in than what the slow labor of human mind can bring. A secret sense awoke that could perceive a presence and a greatness everywhere. So we have to speak a bit about the truth, because Sri Aurobindo wants us to know many things, Mother also. In one of his letters on yoga, he writes, "Science started on the assumption that the ultimate truth must be physical and objective, and the objective ultimate, or even less than that, would explain all subjective phenomena. Yoga proceeds on the opposite view, that the ultimate truth is spiritual and subjective, and it is in that ultimate light that we must view objective phenomena." And he has a very interesting statement in the Foundations of Indian Culture. "The supreme truths are neither rigid conclusions of logical reasoning, nor the affirmations of creedal statement, but fruits of the soul's inner experience." Whoa. Intellectual truth is only one of the doors to the outer precincts of the temple. How beautiful. So beautifully said. Now, the Mother says to us in her collected works a few things of great importance. She says, "The truth is something living, moving, expressing itself at each second, and it is one way of approaching the Supreme." Then she says in the same book, same volume, "The truth is not linear, but global. It is not successive, but simultaneous. Therefore, it cannot be expressed in words. It has to be lived." And her last statement, oh, so powerful. "Truth is a difficult and strenuous conquest. One must be a real warrior to make this conquest, a warrior who fears nothing, neither enemies nor death, for with or against everybody, with or without a body, the struggle continues and will end by victory." This is so important, and I read this many times after Mother left her body. And she says here, with or without a body, it will continue and will end by victory. We know that this yoga is a struggle. Sri Aurobindo calls it a battle. And he warns people away from it. He said, don't take this up if you're not really meant for it, because it's too difficult. So now we see this grand reversal of the night and day. And Ashwapati is experiencing all the world's values changed, heightening life's aim. A wiser word, a larger thought came in than what the slow labor of human mind can bring. A secret sense awoke that could perceive a presence and a greatness everywhere. Of course, this is Sri Aurobindo's experience in the words of Ashwapati. But in the letters on yoga, he says something very interesting. It is intended by the word presence to indicate the sense and perception of the divine as a being. So no more the transcendent, no more the cosmic, but on the physical plane, the sense and perception of the divine as a being, felt as present in one's existence and consciousness, or in relation with it, without the necessity of any further qualification or description. So, thus of the ineffable presence, it can only be said that it is there, and nothing more can or need be said about it. Although, at the same time, one knows that all is there, personality and impersonality, power and light and ananda and everything else, and that all these flow from that indescribable presence. The word may be used sometimes in a less absolute sense, but that is always the fundamental significance, the essential perception of the essential presence supporting everything else. And in the Life Divine, he says, but if we learn to live within, we infallibly awaken to this presence within us, which is our more real self, a presence profound, calm, joyous, and puissant, of which the world is not the master, a presence which, if it is not the Lord himself, is the radiation of the Lord within. I have so much on this presence, but we'll continue on now. The universe was not now this senseless whirl. Is that correct? Did I miss any line?
No.
Okay. Borne round inert on an immense machine. It cast away its grandiose, lifeless front. Now the word grandiose, and I've discussed this at length with Amal Kiran, in Sri Aurobindo's terminology, it is characterized by greatness of scope or intent, grand. Today we use it pejoratively very often. Oh, he has grandiose ideas. But it is not correct. This is not Sri Aurobindo. A mechanism, no more, or work of chance. And we have to go through this a bit because Sri Aurobindo in his Essays, Divine and Human, writes, chance is not in this universe. The idea of illusion is itself an illusion. There was never illusion yet in the human mind that was not the concealing shape and disfigurement of a truth. Wow. What we call chance is a play of the possibilities of the infinite, but a living movement of the body of God. A spirit hid in forces and in forms was the spectator of the mobile scene. The beauty and the ceaseless miracle let in a glow of the unmanifest. The formless, everlasting moved in it. And I just want to take a few moments about this term, the unmanifest. And this is from the hour of God. Whatever the manifestation may be, spiritual or material or other, it has behind it something that is beyond itself. And even if we reach the highest possible heights of the manifested existence, there would be still beyond that even an unmanifested form from which it came. The unmanifested Supreme is beyond all definition and description by mind or speech. No definition the mind can make, affirmative or negative, can be at all expressive of it or adequate. To the mind, this unmanifest can present itself as a self, a supreme nihil, Tao or Sunyam, a featureless absolute, an indeterminate, a blissful nirvana of manifested existence, a non-being out of which being came, or a being of silence out of which a world illusion came. But all these are mental formulas, expressing the mind's approach to it, not that, but impressions which fall from that upon the receiving consciousness, not a true essence or nature, swarupa, of the eternal and infinite. Even the words eternal and infinite are only symbolic expressions through which the mind feels, without grasping, some vague impression of this Supreme. The formless, everlasting moved in it. And here the everlasting is simply a synonym for the divine. Seeking its own perfect form in souls and things. And this is one reason I tell you this on Orville's birthday, that there is absolutely no reason for us to be concerned. Mother says the Supreme is taking care of everything, the management of funds and everything else. And all these falsehoods are just going to disappear or vanish. Yeah, we have to go through some problems at first, but this yoga is a challenge. So now Sri Aurobindo tells us, life kept no more a dull and meaningless shape. In the struggle and upheaval of the world, he saw the labor of a Godhead's birth. And I believe I shared this with you maybe once, that Aurobindo Basu, if you can look it up on YouTube, gave a talk called A God Come Down and Greater by the Fall. Why does God come down and become greater by the fall? Anyone? Because he is, in his transcendent being, above everything, above the multiplicity. He is one, immutable, perfect. But when he decides to take birth in human beings, then we see that the Godhead's birth is a labor. And it's in the struggle and upheaval of the world. And you know that without Oroville, I tell you there would be no hope for this world. Mother has said that Oroville is the paradigm of the new creation. It must happen here. She said to my friend Gerard, who's now in his 90s, and who began Oro Orchard, when he asked her, "Mother, what's the difference in the ashram and Oroville?" And Mother said, "The ashram will always be here for those who wanted to practice the integral yoga." And then Mother does this and says, "And Oroville, it is so wide." So, then we have this extraordinary line, a secret knowledge masked as ignorance. And there's a semicolon there because he wants to tell us more. Fate covered with an unseen necessity, the game of chance of an omnipotent will. And this is the divine's game. This is his play. This is his drama being worked out in every individual here. Everyone. No one is exempt. I think Mother once said that just Stalin had no soul. But even Hitler had a soul and chose to align himself with the adverse forces. Will is capitalized in this last line. The game of chance of an omnipotent will. So, in the Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo tells us that the energy that creates the world can be nothing else than a will. And will is only consciousness applying itself to a work and a result. What becomes desire in the ego is will in the spirit. And I have so many things, but we can't do them all tonight. But Mother says, he says in the Life Divine, will is conscious power and conscious act of force of being. And Mother says, will, power of consciousness turned towards effectuation. And it is only by a true will that all will be able to be changed. A glory and a rapture and a charm. The all blissful sat unknown within the heart. Earth's pains were the ransom of its prisoned delight. So, you see, this all blissful, which is a hyphenated word, there are dozens of them in Savitri. All affirming, all beautiful, all bliss, all causing, all concealing, all conscient, all conscious. Sri Aurobindo likes to make one word of two, to make us understand that the all blissful, the divine presence, sat unknown within the heart. But seated in the heart, he also has to undergo earth's pains that were the ransom of its prisoned delight. Look at that, prisoned is used as an adjective. a prison delight. So we can't really understand that until we get a little higher in our consciousness, but Sri Aurobindo says even pain can be turned into ananda. A glad communion tinged the passing hours. The days were travelers on a destined road, the nights companions of his musing spirit. So this tinge, this slight trace, very often it's in color, but it could also be in thought or feeling. A glad communion tinged the passing hours. The days were travelers on a destined road. So our days are the same. We are all travelers on this destined road. And Sri Aurobindo tells us that one day a group of supermental beings will be on the earth, and they will first manifest in the form of power, and secondly of love. Because Mother says without power, nothing can happen. When Savitri meets the Madonnas and the one has all this love but no power, she says, I'll bring it to you. So now we have, this is of course Ashwapati going through all of this. A heavenly impetus quickened all his breast. Quickened, made alive, vitalized, stirred, accelerated. And the impetus is the impelling force. The trudge of time changed to a splendid march. You know what a trudge is? It's a tiring walk. When we trudge in the mud or in the dust or in the heat, it's an exhausting walk. And of course, time and space, Sri Aurobindo says, are the conceptual movement and extension of the Godhead in us. Time and space are not limited. They are infinite. They are the terms of an extension of consciousness in which things take place or are arranged in a certain relation, succession, order. There are again different orders of time and space. That too depends on the consciousness. The eternal is extended in time and space, but he is also beyond all time and space. Timelessness and time are two terms of the eternal existence. The spaceless eternal is not one indivisible infinity of space. There is in it no near or far. And this takes us to the Isha Upanishad. It is far from us and it is very close. So beautiful. So, the timeless eternal is not measurable by years or hours or eons. The experience of it has been described as the eternal moment. But for the mind, this state cannot be described except by negatives. One has to go beyond and realize it. So I'll end with a few more lines. The divine dwarf towered to unconquered worlds. So I have three statements from Amal, Nalini, and Madhav. Amal says the divine dwarf is the psychic being in its initial state. And I remember one time Madhav telling me, you see many of these people in Africa, who worship all these different forms and all. It's their first birth or second birth. So the divine dwarf is this first appearance of the psychic being in its initial state. Nalini says it is the divine as Vamana, as someone doing austerities. And Madhav tells us the allusion is to the Vamana avatar in Indian mythology. Vamana, the dwarf, Lilliputian in form, asks for a boon of 3 steps of land from the king. The king readily agrees. Suddenly the dwarf assumes a stupendous shape and occupies both the worlds of earth and heaven, and asks where he should place his 3rd step. The king is obliged to offer his head. The Titan yields to the divine in the form of Vamana. So here this living divine person in Ashwapati, finding earth too trifling, exceeds it and grows larger and larger, higher and higher, to encompass the unconquered worlds above. Now Purani says, and Purani was so wonderful, and if you look at our website, you'll see Purani's many, many talks on art, talks on the yoga, talks on poetry. So he says, the dwarf here brings to our mind Vamana, the divine dwarf, an incarnation of Vishnu, who measured the 3 worlds, the material, the vital, and the mental. Veda there is a symbolic, enlarged as usual, enlarged as usual, in the approach and study in his 3 steps. In the Rig, reference to this, which is Puranas. And this is Purani's book, Savitri, an approach and a study. So we'll end here. Earth grew too narrow for his victory, for Sri Aurobindo's victory. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Just a small one.
Yeah.
In that greater by the fall, would a simple explanation simply be that prior to the fall he was unmanifest?
Yes, very true.
And so then...
In his transcendent oneness.
Right.
But when he did... Huh?
But
he's unmanifest, yes.
So the fall brings the manifestation.
Well, out of the formless comes the form.
Right.
And that is the multitude. Good.
You asked why was he greater by the fall, was your question, I think. That you were posing to us.
Because he goes into the multiplicity. Right. To experience different aspects of him, of his own self. Good. A few moments of silence. Om.